That's it?
Recording in progress.
Get Alicia to an airport.
Everything that's on your agenda, I think,
Okay.
depends on how much communication we have. Are you ready, Mrs. Hogan? Just making sure. God, this, I just feel like this is really close to. Oh, God, we got to keep it.
Yeah, it was close the other night too.
Well, there's nobody on here, so it's.
Is it weird that I was singing "It's the Most Wonderful Time of the Year" on the way
A little
here?
bit, a little bit, a little bit.
Of course, that time of year's gonna be here before you know it,
I
too.
know.
Feels like it. The leaves
Yep,
are already falling
it
on the
does.
ground, but
I
then it
know.
was, what, 80 degrees yesterday?
I know. It was
nuts.
beautiful Saturday and Sunday.
It was really
Beautiful.
muggy this morning though too.
It was, it was. It's a little
Oh,
cold.
no, you get those every
All right.
month or so.
Good evening, everyone. It is Monday, October 9th, 2023. This is a special meeting for the City Council of Woodland. If please ensure your cell phones are silenced and rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mrs. Hogan, you please take the roll this evening.
Councilmember Burke,
I hear,
Councilmember Rounds,
Here.
Councilmember Smith,
Thank you very much.
Here.
Oh, sorry.
Councilmember Holland,
Present.
Councilmember Dowdy,
Here.
Councilmember Hall,
Here.
Councilmember Alderman.
All right, everyone here is accounted for. And with that, we will move to citizen communications for items on the agenda. Is there anyone in the gallery who'd like to speak this evening to the items on the agenda? Seeing no one, is there anyone online? Seeing none, it is my pleasure to present the balanced 2024 preliminary, I always have a hard time with this.
Preliminary.
Every single year.
Preliminary.
Preliminary budget for the City of Woodland. This budget has been developed in keeping with City Council's strategic plans for the City of Woodland. Some of the highlights for 2024 preliminary budget include completion of the Exit 21 signalized intersection design. Cowlitz County has provided $2.6 million to make the Exit 21 project shovel-ready. The city will continue to search for construction dollars to complete the fix. Implementation of the collective bargaining agreement with the Woodland Police Officers Association. The agreement allows city's body camera program to commence and makes strides to establish wages and benefits to attract and retain police officers to our department. Civic Center construction, approved by City Council in August of 2023, is starting in October 2023, with completion expected next year and is included in the 2024 budget. The facility will be located near the corner of Lakeshore Drive and Garrick Street. Acquisition of a new financial software system. The city is contractually committed to 3.25% cost of living increases, or COLA, for the clerical and public works teamsters. Woodland Police Association employees will receive 8%. The 8% adjustment is being implemented in order to stabilize the turnover in the police department. The 2024 budget also includes a 3.25% COLA for exempt employees. The budget includes projected revenues and expenditures for 2024 in the amount of $33,426,361. Revenues and expenditures have been estimated with a conservative philosophy. Revenue forecasts are based on current state and local economic trends, when appropriate, historical receipts. Expenditures have been appropriated to ensure the police department is fully funded. Thanks in part to the 2021 levy lid lift, the police department is staffed with 14 sworn officers, including the chief and lieutenant positions. The police department budget comprises 34% of the general fund expenditures. The budget was developed through many hours of analysis and discussion with executive staff in my office, the result of which is a budget that is balanced and incorporates changes in staffing levels and implementation of capital project plans that are needed to maintain infrastructure and attract industrial development. The city will need to continue to discuss and find new ways to provide important services to our community. City Council has been proactive in searching for sustainable funding of city services. Woodland has been very successful in obtaining grants for public works projects, but is now running low on funds that provide required matches for those grants. Major public works projects are still on the horizon, including the Exit 21 redesign to be completed in 2024 and eventual construction once funding is obtained. The city has applied for grants to help complete the Exit 21 improvements. Many thanks to Cowlitz County for providing $2.6 million to complete the Exit 21 design. I hope City Council will favorably consider the 2024 preliminary budget. With the ever-changing economic trends, we must continue to manage the taxpayers' dollars with the utmost care and concern. And with that, if you turn past that message, you will see the 2024 budget timeline and calendar, which includes starting with tonight's meeting with this workshop. And hopefully, we will be able to get through the budget discussions, changes, if any, by City Council by December 31st. The goal is always to get it done before that, but we do have some time built in for additional discussion, changes, and thoughts, questions, concerns from the community and from City Council. So with that, Mr. Boyce.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So today, I'm not expecting a long session tonight, but what I wanted to accomplish was what's on the agenda. I want to go through the budget calendar a little bit with folks so you know what to expect. See the major milestones we're statutorily obligated to attain. I also wanted to go through some of the budget expenditures and revenues in certain funds. Talk about fund balance. We might actually talk about fund balance before we talk about the expenditures and revenues in the major funds. And I wanted to touch on payroll. I think last meeting you got a hard copy of the payroll spreadsheet. And briefly touch on property and sales tax at the end. So looking at the budget calendar, you can see we actually started before June, but that's the first date on here. October 2nd, last Monday, we provided the budget to City Council, the estimate of the expenditures and revenues. Other items, we included the special workshops on the budget, so you'll see October 9th tonight, October 23rd, and on the next page we also have October 30th. We have an extra Monday in the month, so please look at your schedules. If City Council as a whole wants to change those meeting dates, we can, but right now we'll start shooting for those until or if we hear objections, then we'll readdress that. You'll also see on the first page, October 12th, we're going to be sending a notice to the newspaper, and we'll publish twice estimates regarding the property tax levy. And right now, the mayor is recommending that by law, City Council is able to increase property taxes by 1%. Right now, the mayor is recommending that we do not do that. We did not do that last year either, if you remember. So the impact on the city is a little bit less. If you remember 2 years ago when we annexed with the fire district, excuse me, I got some allergies going, so I'll be coughing a little bit. We tried to make it revenue neutral for the citizens, so we reduced our expenditures by the amount of the fire contract at the time, which was, I think, $1.4 million, and we reduced the property tax the city brought in by that same amount. The citizens didn't see a reduction. Basically, the tax moved to the fire district instead of the city to pay for those services. But that, I like to talk about this at the beginning because that fundamentally changed the way we're funding our government, our general fund, and major funds like the street and park that are dependent on general fund monies. So now, we used to look at the property tax. We still bring in about $800,000 in property tax. About 630,000 of that is really related to the levy lid lift we did for the police department. But you can see the share the police department gets of the general fund is quite elevated. I did some back of the napkin looking to see how those funds were being spent, and if you go back to when the 2020, when this started, looking at 3 positions, and just our capital outlay for patrol cars and other major equipment, basically we're covering all that every year. So it's a godsend we were able to do that. If you remember back even further, we had some gambling tax money that came in from the card room that was supplying us at its peak with a little over $200,000 a year that we, council, had tagged for police equipment. So it's allowed us to keep our fleet updated. I can't remember a time when we've said no to equipment for the police department, as city council in its strategic plan talks about police department being a priority. So we're continuing to strive to do that. So you'll see the notices in the newspaper going out. We'll place those notices on our website also for those that don't get the paper. When we get to November, on the second page you'll see November 13th, another special budget meeting. And we'll continue doing these special meetings for the budget until City Council is comfortable with what's in the budget. Anytime, I know there's some City Council members that haven't been through this process before, but City Council as a whole has the ability to make changes to almost anything in the budget. So if there's something you see that you want changed, you just need to speak up and we'll have council discussion centered around that. And the way we've been doing it in the past is if we see consensus, staff will make the change and we'll continue on.
And just one caveat to that, which I've stated in the past during every session, is that if you do have a change and there's something you want added, please come with the solution of where to pull it from. Not just
That's
add,
not our job, that's your job.
add, and then not tell us where you want a reduction in service if needed. So
Right.
we all have our thoughts and opinions. So I just ask that you have a little bit of a plan, and then we will try to accommodate that plan.
Right. And so November 17th, it talks about the preliminary budget being made available to the public. And you'll notice on November 13th, that special city council meeting, it talks about council comments and requests for additions and or changes to the 2024 budget. The idea behind that is hopefully city council will have implemented the changes, and then at that point we're required to make those changes available to the public for comment that is coming shortly after that. November 6th and November 20th, that's when we're required to make the changes to the budget. We adopt the budget by ordinance, and we also adopt the tax levy by ordinance, separate ordinances. We have some flexibility here. We can, if council's comfortable with what's in there and where we're at, we can do a first reading on the budget. It takes 2 readings for an ordinance and move on. But if not, we can continue on with the workshops, with the caveat being, like Mayor Finn stated, we have to have the budget adopted before December 31st. That's the hard date. Councilmember?
I won't be at the November 13th meeting. It's
Okay.
my son's birthday, so I won't miss that day.
Yep. Got to prioritize. All right. So November 13th, City Council will be holding a public hearing where folks can come in and comment on the budget or the tax levy. And November 27th, that's just a workshop if needed. You'll notice that in there. December 5th, regular council meeting where we'd start, it's the last time we can start adopting the final budget unless we hold special meetings to do that. So you'll see the first, right here we're talking about the final reading, the first reading at the meeting before that, but again, the hard and fast deadline is December 31st, so we can push that back if we need to. And again, we have a special meeting if needed December 11th. December 18th is a regular council meeting, so if we hadn't adopted the budget, we could do so at that time. December 14th and 21st, or 21st, we'd send notice to the newspaper for publication on December 20th or the 27th that the final budget has been adopted, and notify the public that they can obtain a copy by contacting the city, or plus it will be online. So, so throughout this process, please keep in mind, City Council as a whole does have the ability to change the budget. It's one of your most important duties as a council. So please speak your mind, and we'll do our best to address concerns or give you information so you can make educated decisions moving forward. All right. Any questions on the budget calendar right off? Okay. All right, so I have, let me turn that off. So I have some slides to present, and let me get them on the screen here too. And let's see. Oh, I'm gonna say you're getting a free preview of the show here.
So what you're saying is we should close our eyes and look away until you get there.
Well, you can tell, I heard someone on council likes pie charts, so there's a few pie charts. Some of these may be difficult to read. I do have another hard copy if folks in the audience want to hold one, because it is a little difficult to read. Okay. I keep hitting that, don't I? Okay. So, so I wanted to start out with fund balance, and city council members, you have hard copies in front of you, so I hope you brought your readers so you can see some of this font. So I'm looking, this first slide is has to do with the ending fund balance in some of the major funds that get their revenue source from the general fund. So it includes the general fund, and the numbers following the name are the fund number, so you can go back to the spreadsheet and find it there. The Park Fund, 101, the Street Fund, 104, and the General Reserve Fund, 301. Now, on this graph, you see that first year is 2020, and you'll see where we started out, and this is a combination of all the funds. I guess I should say what a fund balance is too. So the fund balance is basically when you take all of the liabilities and all of the assets in a fund, this is the amount you end up with. So if it's positive, you have some reserves. If it's negative, you're in trouble and should have changed things long ago. But what you see here is in 2020, that first year, we had about $2.4 million in reserves throughout those for funds. You'll see an increase in 2021 up to about 5.2 million. It was about 5.3 in 2022, and 2023 it's starting to come down. In 2024 we're about where we started in 2020. And the reason for that is, you can see the bullet point above the graph. Mostly it's due to COVID-19 funds. So we had the CARES Act funds that came in first, and then the ARPA, I'm forgetting my acronyms now, that came in, and we've since spent those funds. The CARES Act money went towards a lot of business loans. The ARPA funds mostly went to water projects to help lessen the impact on ratepayers. So, so basically, we're getting back to where we were pre-pandemic, and so we're in that ballpark again. But hopefully, we'll slowly start building that fund balance again over time. But it will definitely not be as dramatic as what you see here with the with those COVID dollars that came in. Any questions on that?
How many parks do we have?
8, I think.
8?
Is there eight?
Yeah, if you go onto the city website, we have all our parks listed. That's what I'm thinking of off the top of my head.
Is that including Scott Hill?
I don't think so. I can look it up and let you know in a minute.
No,
Right.
roughly 8.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pete, what we target for our general fund?
We target, we have financial policy, which we try to reach 3 months of expenditures. We have been at that level. I need to recheck for 2024 to see. For a long time, we were well below that,
right.
and building towards it. We did meet that target, and I just need to look at the 2024 numbers to make sure we're still there.
Okay, I just wanted the public to hear
Right.
that too, so.
Right, and the fund balance we use, it's good to say too that, there are cash flow issues. So taxes come in twice a year, and if you had no fund balance and just waited for the, that input with property tax, you could get into situations where your expenditures are exceeding what you have in cash. Now, because we've dropped our property tax to the extent we have, it's still an important factor in how we fund the government, but we're more reliant on sales tax, which comes in a little more evenly throughout the year. And yeah, so we have fairly good fund balances in these funds. The reason we group them together, the auditors kind of do this too, because the general fund monies can be used for any legitimate government purpose. When you get into enterprise funds like the water fund, the sewer fund, the stormwater fund, those rates those funds receive can only be used for whatever fund they're in: water, sewer, stormwater. So it can't be shared with other funds. But the general fund can share its funding. Because we decreased the property tax, in the past we had actually sent property tax directly to the park fund and the street fund. But what you'll find in this budget is that we're reseeding it all into the general fund, and then we're doing transfers from the general fund to the park fund and to the street fund. Any other questions?
8 parks does include Scott Hill.
Oh, it does in school?
Pretty good off the top of my head. Gotta give you credit.
Good job.
All right. So the next So the next slide is the ending fund balance for the water fund, and that's fund number 401. And you can see there's a general upward trajectory. However, in 2022, you see a slide, and basically that is due to capital projects that we had that year that reduced that. What's driving The fund balance in the water fund is, you know, the rates come from, or the revenue comes from user rates. So when we're looking at these enterprise funds, we know we have projects coming. So we're saving up to do those projects. The larger ones are the reservoir, the 1.5 million gallon reservoir, which is about $5 million, and the two filters in the water treatment plant that need to be refurbished. So you'll see when those projects happen, to get those done, we're going to have to take on some debt to do that. So what you'll see happen to the fund balance is that it will go down as those projects move forward and the debt service is required every year. So we're still, as you know, we've acquired some low interest 2.5% USDA loans that will help mitigate the impact to the ratepayer. We anticipate in November at some point we'll have paperwork before City Council to do final authorization, and you'll be able to see what exactly the debt service payments will be moving forward. Okay. All right. Any questions on the fund balance in the water fund? Yes.
So real quick, kind of back to the mayor's message. The water fund, it says the 2024 expected is the 5.5% for the water fund. That's next November, correct? Not this November, right?
Well, according to the schedule, it's supposed to be implemented this November. So when we're talking the 5.5% increase,
So this 2024 is talking about 2023 November
well,
in this write-up? I just want to clarify.
yeah.
what
So
this
so the
write-up is.
so the schedule for the 5.5% increase is due this November. That would carry on into 2024, and the following November would also be a 5.5% increase. So annually, you're looking at a 5.5% increase. So the larger 15.5 that we had is, I believe that's done.
Okay, so this November is not a 15.5, it's a 5.5.
No.
Okay, I
5.5.
thought we had one more large increase, that's why I'm asking. Okay,
Right.
perfect, that's what I
Right.
wanted to know.
So in the past, you'll remember we were doing a blanket 7% increase every year. We did the rate study and that changed. The issue with the water fund was that a lot of these, well, the water reservoir for one, which we need to deal with, $5 million right out of the gate. These projects are happening more upfront than what was happening in sewer. So with sewer, you'll see a 2.6% increase. And again, that's down from the 7% that we charged before. So when we did the rate study, we found out that we were charging too much for sewer and we needed to pull that back, still saving for those sewer projects coming on. But you'll see the fund balance in the sewer fund is healthier than the fund balance in the water fund.
So both of these rates that are on here is the rates that will hit this November, 2023, for the sewer too?
Yes.
Right,
Okay.
yes,
That's what, I just want to clarify. I wasn't
Right.
sure if it was for this November or next November.
right,
That'll be an increase for this one for budget year 2024.
right.
Okay.
I have a question on two of them, actually. I'll be patient with me, this is my first.
No, that's why we're here.
Okay, the first one, would it be feasible, even though we have the $1.3 million in fund balance there for water? Would it be something we could maybe use part of that into the big projects like the water tank, so we don't have to take out such a big load?
Well, that's a good question. When we take out debt, you have to carry a reserve in
Right.
place. And that's to ensure that, you know, if something catastrophic happens, we can still make payments. They also want to make sure that if an emergency situation happens, let's say it's not the reservoir, but, you know, we have a huge water line break that's going to take hundreds of thousands of dollars to fix, that needs to be in place.
I'm just asking.
Yep, no, it's a
The
good
other
question.
one was,
And real quick though, but that big number you're looking at is based on that rate. So really, right now, at the end of, correct me if I'm wrong, 2023, we'll have just shy of 785 in the fund. That number, that 1.356
We'll go down.
is
Well,
based
that's-
on the rates collected through the year of 2024. So
Right.
we don't actually have that yet.
Right.
okay, okay.
Right, that's
The other
anticipated.
question was where it came to the sewer. We've heard a lot about the sewer district has done very well and they have a very large reserve. Why are we gonna increase the sewer bill?
Well, Councilmember, that's because there are projects in the future. We're borrowing a lot to get the projects done in the water fund because they're an immediate need. The sewer fund, the projects are further down the line, so it's like, you know, you're balancing your checking account, you're saving for, because you know you need a new roof on your house. So you're saving now to take care of that expenditure in the future. The less we can borrow, the better, because then we're not paying the interest. So you'll see that reserve start to climb, and it is climbing. But there are expenditures that we need to take care of, and they're just not now, they're in the future.
Can I make a comment to that? I think the 2.5% is so that we don't have to do a 15%, which will really be painful. So it's kind of putting away now.
Right, and
So.
I totally understand, but that's what with all the controversy and stuff with water bills, I've heard time and time again how yes, there's a water rate, we've increased that, but we've lowered the sewer to counteract the water. But now we're gonna raise the sewer back up, so we're not counteracting.
The sewer's always been raising.
So,
It's just
yeah,
not
the
as
the
much.
sewer is gonna continue to increase around 2.6%. The water started out at 15.5 and now it's dropped to 5.5, and will continue on at that lower increase, the 5.5.
And I think like the sewer wasn't necessarily lowered to counteract the water. It's just that there wasn't as much money that needed to be spent for that.
Yeah,
When
so
we did the, when they did the rate study.
You're
No,
probably gonna
that's
hear lots
great.
of dumb questions.
Yeah.
No, I don't think
No.
those are dumb
No,
questions.
absolutely not.
You
And
know what? If
it was
you're
all
asking
based off that
questions-
rate study that the city did a few years ago.
Right,
If
so,
you're asking a question, somebody else there wants to ask it as well.
Right.
And if you look at the next slide that he's gonna show, you can see that we have some major capital projects in the
Well,
sewage,
you're
and
jumping
it drops.
ahead. I'm not jumping
But
ahead.
I'm just telling you
Yeah.
because you're talking about sewage, and you can see it drops significantly,
Okay.
our balance next year because of capital fund
And the
projects.
reason why we're in this shape that we're having to charge what we're charging is because it wasn't done in the past.
Right.
They didn't save for reserves to fix anything that was coming up, so,
That point I do understand.
yeah.
yeah. Well, yeah, it's like building the foundation for sustainability and growth. We,
My little brain, I
you know,
just won't
yep, you start out with the plans, the water plan, the sewer plan, and then you do the rate study to determine how to fund those. When you're putting the plans together, there's great debate about, you know, what projects should be included or not. But yeah, it's, yep,
And we're fortunate that the ARPA dollars were earmarked for those types of projects.
Yes.
That saved us, the taxpayers. That was an
Yeah.
unexpected windfall that I
Right.
don't think people realize. That
Absolutely.
saved a lot of money.
yeah, yeah. I agree. Let's see, hit the wrong button. Okay, the next slide here is the ending fund balance for the sewer fund, 402. And you can see it's been increasing, staying pretty level at the 3.3 million. You'll see in 2024 it goes down. The Public Works Director and I have to have a little more conversation, and we'll be soliciting council's opinion also. There, you know, the initial budget she submitted included two fairly large projects. One was a biosolid tank that we talked about. It's about in the neighborhood of $3 million. That's not included in this budget, but the other project was, and we think maybe we should have got rid of the other project and kept on with the biosolid tank. So you may see some discussion centered around that at a future meeting fairly quickly. So you'll see a reduction, no matter which way we go, you're going to see a reduction in fund balance. And again, after that project's done, over time, it will continue to build for future projects. All right. The other wrinkle in that is, we have Fund 421 and 422, which are water and sewer reserve funds that have some balances that we may want to shift some of those funds to the water fund and the sewer fund to shore up those fund balances. Any question on sewer? Okay. And we'll have plenty of other.
I'll make a comment on sewer, because
Sure.
I think running into Derek Ambergy today, who runs the wastewater treatment plant, I think that he's done a phenomenal job down there since we
Yeah.
came in 2016, and we put him kind of in charge of that facility. I think he's done a phenomenal job in saving money for us down there and finding solutions, and this biosolids tank is one of those solutions. The screw press
The
was
screw
another
press.
one. That was a huge discussion with council a number of years ago of whether or not to spend, was that $500,000 or two?
It was like 200,000.
Yeah, and it was like, ooh, that's a lot of money, do we wanna do that? But over time, it has actually paid for itself and reduced our shipping costs of our waste out of, our biosolids.
Right.
I'm trying not to get yucky here.
So now we're not-
To get rid of the nasty clay that needs to be taken away. So it's paid for, he does a really good, I just wanna say that publicly, that he's done a really great job in speaking with him today and talking about this biosolids tank, and it's gonna save us more money again in the long run.
Yeah.
When it comes to rates and running the plant.
Yeah, before we were spending an inordinate amount of money shipping the water.
It was.
And so the screw press dewaters, the effluent and makes it,
I remember those
Very-
meetings.
yeah.
And as just a citizen, I was shocked that we were paying trucking companies to haul off liquid.
It was like $100,000 a month. I think.
Yes.
It was
And that's
Well-
where money was
Yeah.
going.
well, and before that, we had some, a pond in the bottoms that we were allowed to send it to. So it was a short truck ride to that pond, but then DEQ shut that down. So we had to find another
Which we
way
paid
to.
and maintained as well,
Right.
ponds. I mean, it
Right.
just wasn't, yeah.
But
Did you use
it-
that for fertilizer?
They
Yeah,
did.
so my understanding now is that we're shipping it to Eastern Washington, and it's being used as fertilizer.
Because what people don't realize, this is fascinating nerd stuff, but the screw pot press squishes out, it's like a ringer. It wrings out all of the liquid.
I thought we weren't getting icky.
Yeah.
It's just,
The clay, they call it clay, I think Derek calls it clay, is
that
that
was
right? The clay
so
material.
that was the interim public works director, so before Ms. Coleman, and he did this whole presentation. But it was fascinating. I thought it was fascinating because I had no idea that was even a thing.
Yes.
Right.
But you just wring it out, and then now you're just shipping solids instead of a truckload of
Extra
liquid
heavy.
with some floaty
Yeah.
bits.
Yeah. Just
So,
wanted to,
no,
but
it
we've
was
really,
after Bart.
we've really listened to the employees that are actually doing the job and taking their recommendations into account before
Yeah.
bringing it to council as well. And I think all the employees do a great job at they're saving money up at the water plant as well. I mean, I just want to make it known that these are all things that we try to bring forward that are really good solutions to reduce costs to everybody.
Can I get a better definition of floaty bits?
No.
No.
No. Mr. Boyce,
Moving on.
Moving on,
I think that one will go to Tracy.
let's just float on here. Let's go.
going the wrong way here. Ah,
I find it interesting too, though, just so you know.
all right, so overall total revenues, I'm showing here 2022, the actuals, the budgeted for 2023, because we haven't completed the fiscal year, and the proposed budgeted revenues for 2024. So this includes all the funds, so all of the enterprise funds, the general fund, all of the capital project funds. So everything includes, the grant-funded projects and whatnot. So you can see in 2022, the actual was 33.9 million. The budgeted revenues at 38 million this current year, and next year we're budgeting about 33 million. That's just to give you a sense overall of what the budget's like. So that was total revenues, total expenditures. 2024 we're at 33 million again, so revenues are equaling expenditures. And one thing to keep in mind when we talk revenues and expenditures in the budget, we include the fund balances. So I think it would be more accurate to say resources, but everyone uses the term revenue. So the resources include all of the revenue you think you'll be collecting that fiscal year, plus the fund balance. So, and then when you're looking at the expenditures, that also includes the ending fund balance. So it includes all the expenditures you think you'll spend throughout the year to operate, and then the dollar amount you'll have at the end after all of the expenditures have been done. So just keep that in mind. All right. The next slide, our first pie chart. So this is the 2024 general fund revenues. Just trying to give you a sense of where the revenues are coming from. So you can see the biggest chunk of the pie is sales tax. That's the gray portion. Well, it's gray on my worksheet, but it looks purple on the screen. Sales tax, we're expecting about 2.8 million. To the right of that, you'll see property taxes, 921 million.
921,000.
Oh, I wish, yeah. 921,000. No, I wouldn't be working here long if that were the case. The beginning fund balance of 2.3 million. Just going counterclockwise, miscellaneous and interest, 113,000. Grants to and this is just to the general fund. So we have other grants in other funds, but just to the general fund we have 75,200 expected. Intergovernmental revenue from other jurisdictions, about 31,000. Fines, fees, and assessments, 1.9 million. So that includes everything from fees for building permits to court fines, for instance. Other taxes, I'd have to go into that to see exactly what that is, but 116,000. Public utility tax, 726,000. So when you see the utility bills at your home, you'll see an amount for public utility tax, and this is where it goes, to the general fund. And so part of those proceeds fund the general fund activities such as clerk treasurer, police, community development, and we don't earmark it for anything, but general fund revenues also go to parks and streets to keep those funds going. Utility tax external, that looking back, I probably should have included that with the franchise fees to the next part of it, but that's like tax, PUD tax, and cable TV, telephone. Those total about 867,000, and probably should be combined with that 65,000 there. So that gives you a sense of where the revenues are coming from to keep the general fund going.
Chief, could we ask you to have your officers start writing a whole lot more tickets?
Oh.
Well, the problem with that is most of the fines goes to the state. We just get a small portion.
Yeah.
Hey, I just got one the other day. Not here, but yeah.
Yeah. So the state will thank you for paying that fine. All right. So moving on, unless there are other questions on general fund revenue. All right, general fund expenditures. So this is just broken down by department. So you'll see the police department is by far the biggest piece of the pie at 3.2 million expected for 2024. The ending fund balance, we're expecting the general fund balance to end at 1.8 million. So those are the biggest parts of the pie. You'll see the next item is transfers out, 1.3 million. And those transfers out are going to the park and the street fund. Primarily, there may be one other transfer out to one of the capital funds for one of the projects. Yeah, and then you can see the clerk treasurer's office, that's 589,000. For legal services, which includes the city attorney, the labor attorney we use to negotiate contracts. The Teamsters contract will have to be negotiated next year, both for clerical and public works. And it also includes public defender and the prosecuting attorney. So that's where you see the 235,000. There may be some discussion we'll have to have about public defenders fairly soon. We've been notified by, we use the Grimm law firm to provide public defender services. Apparently there's a shortage of attorneys in Cowlitz County. We've been notified that there may be an issue in 2023 where they're not able to fulfill their contract. They've lost a couple of attorneys to the county and have been unable to attract more attorneys to the firm. There's really two firms in the county right now that's providing most of the public defender services, and they're both maxed out and having trouble attracting new attorneys. We've actually been approached by the district court asking all the jurisdictions in Cowlitz County to basically find additional attorneys and not count on these two law firms. So we're not the only ones in this boat, but it may be something that causes a little bit of financial strain as we move forward. I'm not sure what the solution is, but we're going to find out one way or the other. So our city attorney is in contact with the court, Frank Randolph, and we're monitoring this situation as we move forward. But that could be a change to our 2024 budget as we go forward. General facilities, that's right below legal services at 1 million. That is for the upkeep of city buildings. It also is our general supplies budget for all our office supplies and whatnot for the city. It also includes all of our IT expenses. And the big kicker in that is there's about $500,000 for property and liability insurance. Every year that goes up. We don't know what we're going to be quoted until December. So we react to it at the last minute. For 2023, we're in the range of about $450,000. I threw another $50,000 on that, knowing things are going to go up. What's happening with the claims market, it's not really the individual claims the city is having that's driving this increase. It's really nationally. And what we're hearing is because of natural disasters, fires and storms and things like that, insurance companies are taking a hit and they're passing it along. So we use this ICAW, I forget what the acronym stands for, but basically it's a group of cities that band together to provide their own insurance, which helps keeps the rates lower, but the entity has to go out and get reinsurance, and that's where we're seeing some of those issues. We've been doing a pretty good job of keeping claims low, but it's something we have to continually watch. Trying to see, so you also you can see community development, building, and planning. So the building department costs about $356,000 a year. Planning department $431,000. Legislative $42,800. Basically, that's comprised of the stipend for city council members and training and travel to attend, various events and training sessions. So that gives you a sense of where the money's going, and we'll get further into it as we go along. But yeah, any questions?
You know how much that $9,000 in copiers bothers me, right?
I do, yeah.
Chuckled a little when I read
So-
it, thinking about it.
I know. I was
So-
hoping we were just gonna bypass.
Plus, I was waiting to hear something about the color graphs, but
It's okay.
I tried. I was looking at them in black and white, and it really wasn't.
17 shades of gray.
Yeah. So, so moving on, we're shifting to the park fund. We're starting out with revenues here, and you can see the big blue Pac-Man item. That is the contribution from the general fund. So the general fund's providing $261,000 to keep the park fund afloat, and that's part of the reason why when we look at fund balances, we group the park fund with the general fund and the street fund. You'll see that as we go along here. Beginning fund balance is never all that large in the park fund, so you're seeing $2,000 we're estimating. There's an argument you could make, well, maybe it should be a general fund department instead of a special revenue fund. Usually when you use the term special revenue fund, it means it has a source of revenue, that helps sustain it. But really it's the general fund that's pushing this. You can see the other large piece is I believe we're just hoping that we receive this RCO grant, or did we receive that?
We did receive it, but we haven't, yes, we received it.
Okay,
We
so-
don't have the cash in hand.
Right, so
That's
it's,
Forest Fire Health
so it's coming, 100,000. You can see, we have rental facilities such as the community center and the Horseshoe Lake spot. So we have key deposits. So we take deposits and then we receive the revenue and then we pay it back if the facility is returned in good order and the keys returned. I combined donations, miscellaneous revenue, and special event revenue. So we're anticipating about $1,000 next year. Rentals of those facilities, we're expecting about $12,000 in rental fees. Just some general fees, about $9,000. So really it's the contribution from the general fund that's really making this fund go over time. Any questions on? Yes.
Do you have, in the rental part of it, the new civic center will be built sometime next year? And if I understand it right, there will be opportunities for people to rent that out also?
Mhm.
Do you have that?
We didn't take that into account when looking at the rental fees, so this is based on the current rentals, but we could have a conversation about that moving forward. Any other question? Yes.
Ms. Coleman, for the RCO grant, is there a timeline on how quickly you have to spend that?
Yeah, by the
Turn
end of,
Turn that mic on for.
by the end of 2000, let me think, mid-2025. So we have to start spending it next year, 2024, and then we have to have it complete, I think, by June of 2025.
Okay. So if they do not feel they're ready for it, we have to give the money back? Is that what happens?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted clarification.
Yeah, and the bad thing about when you go out for a grant, you don't ever want to give the money back.
Absolutely.
No,
I
I'm
just
just
had
letting
somebody, I had somebody ask
Yeah.
who's part of that.
Because
the other
next time
day,
you
and I just was
apply, you
curious.
probably won't get it.
Right.
They
I just
score
was
you down.
curious.
So just the best thing is to do, don't apply unless you know you can move forward.
Right, absolutely.
And,
All right.
and this one specifically, this 100K is for what?
That is for one artificial turf field at Scott Hill Park for phase 2 of one of the soccer fields.
Perfect, thank you.
Any other questions on park revenue? Okay, we'll go to park expenditures. And when looking at the separate funds, I was breaking it down by category. So you'll see salaries and benefits is the largest chunk, 146,000. The next large chunk is repair and maintenance at 108,000. Combined fuel, utilities, and communications at 49,000. The outside funds, we do a cost allocation with the general fund, so you'll see that red item, charges to general fund, 29,000. So basically, so you have an understanding that you'll see this in all the major outside funds, the street, water, and sewer. Basically, we look at the services that are provided by the general fund to the outside funds, which includes everything from the insurance, city council time. There's a whole host of items, facility maintenance, and all of it. So that is basically an administrative fee that we charge the outside funds. Yeah, the rest, Horseshoe Lake Management, we have 15,000 in there. And correct me if I'm wrong, Public Works Director Coleman. Basically, we have to monitor the lake. We test the water. We try to be proactive about the health of the lake, and that's where the money comes from for that. Rental deposits, we take in the fees, and then we have to return it if the facility is in good shape, 14,700. Equipment, we just have $500 this year. Supplies and the copy release, again, I keep accidentally hitting that button. My apologies. Okay, so that's what we're looking at for expenditures. Any questions right off?
Real quick, kind of going back to the revenues. From the signs that we had posted at Horseshoe Lake about collecting donations, have those signs come down since Labor Day?
I did ask our Public Works Superintendent to remove those. I have not driven by to verify they've all been taken down.
I've seen a few that are still up that we need to
So we can get
remove.
those down by tomorrow.
And then what was our total that we collected during that period, do you know?
But just one more thing, on the signs it said it was only good through Labor Day, I think the sign said. So hopefully people would read that portion of it.
Okay.
And we actually shut down the site, so it won't, even if you scan it, you wouldn't be
okay.
able to do a $5 donation. And I believe the last time I checked, it was just at $1,000
Okay.
that we
and-
took in donations of, and of that, over 90% were outside the city of Woodland.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
And so did any of that, is that something that you would look at doing again? And did that go into this at all?
So that was all that's all part of council's decision. If you guys would like to do that again, we did a trial run. If
Okay.
you want to do that again, we can absolutely do that. We shut it down because you get a monthly fee and we don't want to pay a monthly fee.
Oh, okay.
And then we wanted to do that trial run from Memorial Day to Labor Day. And then we did include that in an estimate of what we could receive if we went through there in the future, but I don't believe it was, we included that in the current revenue, but we didn't include it in the revenue going forward,
Okay. Thank
because
you.
it has to be voted by the council.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, and let's move on to the street fund, Fund 104, the revenue. Okay, so here you can see where money for the street fund comes from. So that mismarked. Okay, so that is, it's marked revenue, but that's actually expenditure. Let me move to the next
See, I
slide.
thought so.
Oop. My apologies. Make
it's
sure
the
the
same.
expenditures are revenues here.
It's the same slide.
Oh,
Yeah.
well,
Which
my
one
apologies.
do we wanna ignore?
Yeah, so we'll
And that-
cover that at the next meeting.
That contribution number is really large.
Yeah.
Make it out that the entire city of
Well,
plus Kalamazoo.
well, when you're looking at that contribution number, it's a contribution from the street fund to Fund 327, to Fund 328, and to Fund 336. Those are capital project funds. I looked at that after I printed it, and it's like, oh, people are gonna get confused. So the amount that's being contributed is 395,055. So, yeah,
So the funds
it's,
are coming from.
yeah, it's a little confusing when you read that. But the street fund is making contributions to other capital transportation projects within the city. Just to, I know we don't have the pie chart up, but just to talk about where the street fund revenue comes from, I can give you a short synopsis really quick. So, really, it comes from gas tax monies. It comes from a contribution from the general fund. Council adopted that 0.01, 0.1% sales tax for the Transportation Benefit District. We're anticipating that will bring in about 90,000. The beginning fund balance is sitting at, I'll just kind of run through it, 389,000. Roadway access fees, 13,000. Banner application fees, 300. DWR banner application fees, $200. Just trying to track it separately. Multimodal transportation, 8,536. Those are monies received from the state. The gas tax monies listed as MVFT cities, that's 119,000. Investment interest, 8,000. Miscellaneous revenues, we're predicting about 18,000. The contribution from the general fund is just short of $1 million, 963,000. That's more than we've done in the past. You know, usually we're in the 400, 500,000 range, but we have a number of transportation projects that we're trying to complete that are basically supplementing grant revenue. And it makes sense to make that contribution to get you know, the bang for your dollar. So the general fund's contributing 963,000. Transportation impact fees, and we're hoping, you know, these are fees we hope to receive next year, about 88,900. And a contribution from 301, the general reserve fund, and that was one of the funds in that first fund balance we looked at, of 162,000. So that's where the revenues come from. My apologies on the slide again. The any questions right off? Yes.
Reading through it this weekend, it goes back to the statement from Mayor Wolfman. You're authorizing 1/10 of 1%, and I was gonna bring this up because after your comment, if you have any suggestions where, so I'm gonna do it anyways.
Well, I said we would help get through it. I'm
Okay.
not like, it's not a, I mean.
Because that's one of the big issues in this town, that are streets. I would actually like to see if we could come up with some ideas to maybe put a little more in there, so we can build some up to do
Right.
something with it.
So council's had the option of we put it out on a ballot a few times to the citizens to raise for 0.2%. And it's been voted down twice or three?
Yeah,
Three times, twice, 2 times. So this 1% was councilmatic, for the 1/10 of 1%. But in those, the transportation benefit district, you have 2 funding sources. You've got retail sales tax with the 2/10, which has been voted down, and then also the TAP fees that you can assess on 2 vehicles that live within site city limits. And that's something that I've advocated against this whole time, and so far council's agreed with me
Yeah,
just
the
because
state gets us bad enough.
it puts the heavy lift on those that just live here, even though we've got additional 12,000 that are using the roads. So we could certainly revisit that and go out to a ballot measure again with the 2/10 and ask for.
Well, it's just, whenever we have any kind of good discussion with the city or the people that I talk to, that, besides exit 21, that's the other major thing that they want. And of course, knowing now that it's been on the
But
ballot.
they don't want to pay for it.
Yeah, right, they want, knowing that now, well, I guess it's,
It goes on to taxable goods inside the city, and our opinion was at the time when we did that was that it spreads, it's fairness across the board. Everybody's who's using the road,
That's
is paying for the
understandable.
roads.
Understandable.
But it was, I wanna say, was it a nickel per $50 of taxable goods? I can't,
Don't
maybe it
remember
was
off the
a
top of my
dime.
head.
So, yeah, so at the time too, when you look at water rates and you look at.
right, no,
more-
that's understandable. I
Yeah,
just-
so,
and-
I mean,
I'd
we
like to see
tried.
a little more so we can show that we're making an effort to get some money built
Right.
up to do something.
And
But
it,
if you look at other municipalities that have TBDs, which is Transportation
You go with
Benefit
them big
District.
words again.
Well, it's.
The TLA.
The TBD, so Transportation Benefit District, that's how other municipalities fund their road projects. Like, so some of my customers, that's kind of what that's their business. And they will, check in once a year with little, small towns like us and smaller, and that's the only way that they can build up like a savings account enough to do things like this year we do this side of town, and next year it'll be, and unfortunately, so like, the history behind that, I get blamed a lot because I wrote the against statement in the ballot, the pamphlet, the first go-around. And the reason was because there was no plan in place, right? There was no plan. Now we have, 43 pages of street projects or, public works projects.
right.
So in my opinion is, once folks can see, here's our clear plan in place. This is how we can get the money to do all these things. And then everybody, including passers through who are just filling up, stopping at Safeway or getting gas or whatever, they're paying towards that, right? So it,
More bang for your buck.
right,
Well-
but unfortunately, trying to get folks on board with a
Adding more tax.
right, 0.1% or whatever. It's like, I don't have a good answer. You can only get money from certain places, and
Right.
here's your options, and if you don't pick one that helps fund it, then where does the money come from? That's always been my question. It's like, well, what is your suggestion? So,
One of the challenges we have with that too is with the state when we go and ask for money for 21, it's like, well, you haven't even helped yourself. Why should we, you haven't funded your own benefit district, why should we just fund it outright when there's no buy-in from the community?
and they
And
have,
that was their statement back to us, so,
Because
I mean,
it's your intersection, pay for it.
I know, and then that's our response back to them.
When we met with our state representative also, he said the exact same thing. He goes, do you have a transportation benefit district? He goes, it looks favorable if your citizens actually pass that to where you stand a better chance of getting some money to help. Because if your own citizens don't want to put in some money, they're not willing to put money in your direction either.
But my argument to that is we are already putting money into it.
Yeah.
We're already paying on a daily basis, but I get both sides. But-
Yeah.
Do we have
Let's
a
go.
place where what we're taking in for business licenses? I know it goes through the state now,
Yeah, so that revenue goes to the general fund.
goes to the general fund?
Yeah.
And are we making as much as we were before?
I would have to look at that. I couldn't
I'll
answer
bet you
that
it's
question off
less.
the top of my head.
Because I know a whole bunch that don't have licenses.
I think it should be noted too, in talking about the TBD funds, Technically, they can only be used for road maintenance, but it does free up money in the road fund for other projects. The tax or the transportation impact fees that we're going to be discussing maybe at the next meeting, that can go towards new projects or capacity improvements in current roads and infrastructure. So, it's a combination of things that are put together to make sure you have the matching funds for the grants that are out there. So,
And to answer your question, Councilmember Burkett, we've estimated about 70,000
$70,000?
in business license.
What were we
and
taking
permits.
before we went there?
Year to date, we're just shy of 60,000.
You know what it was, though, he's asking before it went to
Oh.
the
Oh,
state.
before it went to, when did it go to state? It went down,
We went way down.
I wanna say, we've been doing that
Beginning
for
of
2 years
22?
now?
2 years, I think.
So was that 2020, I've got back to 2022, it looks like we took in about 75,000.
That was through the state. 2021 was still through the state.
That was, 2021 was still here? Okay,
Yeah.
so I don't have that number. Yeah.
I can
So-
find that for you, though.
And do we have a list of who has a license that's paid for? Oh, we do?
Yes.
Do we ever have a monitor it to see if the people?
We are a complaint-driven code enforcement.
So if
In
you
other
know
words, if you don't want a
someone,
license, you don't get one.
but if you know someone operating without a license,
Then
if you
you need to-
report it, then they will go and enforce it.
Oh, I gotta be the narc.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, that's me.
That's the
I
same
am.
thing.
Oh.
I just say we need money and.
My daughter from college is calling. Sorry.
Yeah.
I was looking down here to see what you were doing. My apologies. Okay. All right. So, any other questions on street fund expenditures? Okay, not seeing any. We'll move. Oops. Keep going the wrong way. All right. Next is the water fund, and so we're starting off with revenues. So you can see the biggest chunk of the pie is water sales. So that's what the ratepayers contribute when paying their rates. We're estimating at 2.7 million for 2024. The beginning fund balance we're estimating at 1.1 million, just short of 1.2. And, again, when you consider the projects like the reservoir project, I mean, that's $5 million right there. You can see taxes on water sales, 95,000, installations, about $12,000, interest investment interest miscellaneous and on-off fees total about 27,000. Utility install deposits and construction meters about 28,000. So again, the water fund's being driven by the rates paid by the citizens using the service. Questions on the rates? And that's assuming the 5.5% goes through. Let's see, 2024 expenditures on the water fund. You can see the biggest chunk of the pie is the ending fund balance, 1.3 million, and again, we're attempting to save for these future projects. Salaries and benefits come in at 780,000. And this year, you'll see the big blue on the about 9 o'clock there. Our source of water is from our Ranny well. I always pronounce that wrong. And we have to have it cleaned this year. In the past, it hit around the 200,000 mark. We went out for bids this year. We had 240,000 in the budget, and we had bids of around 800,000 to $1 million, which.
Because COVID.
Well,
See,
yeah, and there's
everything
only a
was-
couple of companies that do this work. So we're we're budgeting 800,000 next year. We rejected all the bids this year. We're gonna rebid it. We're trying to find a lower rate, which we may or may not get. But you know, that shows you why you have to have a fund balance, because sometimes you get these unexpected expenditures that come in. I think, was it Ridgefield that just had it done for 400,000? Or
No, it was around Longview, Kelso,
I'm
Kalama, one
sorry.
of those areas. They have a Randy well, and it was done for $400,000. So
and that wasn't that long ago, but
I doubt who that was.
that was our $850,000 low bidder.
They did-
We have a different way that we have to clean our Randy well, and so we have to pump it all the way up to the water plant, to run it through the filter system, to go through the to basically go through the plant to go back out to the river. So it costs us more to do it.
And theirs is right on the river, so it's
Yeah.
nice and close.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, that's another expenditure we'll have to contend with.
Pete, how close are we to the drop dead date on that? I mean, how urgent is that?
I'll let the Public Works Director answer that.
It is urgent because if we do not clean our Randy laterals, I can pretty much guarantee that we'll have water restrictions that'll need to be going in place for next year. Because we can't produce enough water, even though we're gonna have a larger tank reservoir, we have to be able to produce the water, so we have to be able to pull that water through our laterals from the river and the ground source to be able to treat it. If you can't pull enough water because your lateral, think of an artery. If your artery is closing up because it has a lot of contaminants and such in those laterals, and I say contaminants not in a negative way, just think of iron, you know. So let's say it has that in there and that artery's closing, you can't suck enough water up. So last time we had it done, which was 10 years ago, we replaced 3 of the lateral lines that went out there. So when you go in there and the divers go in there and they clean these, you might have to replace a couple of your lateral lines. So you might have to shut down 2 of them and add 2 more lines in there, so you have a nice open pipe to be able to pull that water up to treat it.
So is the answer months, like in the next
The answer is we would want to get it done before spring.
this winter sometime?
Yeah, so that's why we're gonna rebid it again, and see if those bids come in. We're hoping that maybe somebody else will bid it. Right now, there's only 2 certified diving companies that can clean laterals in Washington State. We might bid it, and hopefully maybe somebody from another state can come in and bid it that can still follow the same guidelines.
Right. All right, so, yeah, you can see repairs and maintenance set at 370,000, professional services for engineering for certain projects, 167,000. But it gives you a sense of where the expenditures are going in the general fund there. Or, I'm sorry, in the water fund.
Ms. Coleman, now with the rainy well, if we do it more frequently, will that cut the cost for future?
Yes, actually, I did budget for it, so we're gonna do it every 3 years, and I've set, in addition to the budget, I've set $200,000 aside each year to be able to offset that large impact. So in 3 years, part of the budget is, let's set $200,000 aside this year, the following year, and the following year, so we do it every 3 years, so hopefully it won't be as large of an impact to the city, yes.
Okay.
All right.
Ms. Coleman, is that something that's been planned for in the past?
Not, I can't answer that question. I know that
Well,
the
you said
last.
it's been 10 years since it's been
I know the
completed.
last time it was done was 10 years ago. And so I knew that it was pretty new now that I'm going on my 7th year, but they said, oh, we don't do it for, every 5 to 10 years. So, but when we look at our water production, we're like, we should do it more often. So,
Thank you.
You said there's 3 lines, right?
no, there's more than 3 lines. I'm saying we replaced 3 lines last time, 10 years
Okay.
ago, yes.
So is this something you could do like a couple of lines one year?
You might not have to do the lines. I think the more often that you clean them, I don't think you would have to replace them. You just have to be careful when you go in and clean them because you might damage them as you're cleaning them, so you might have to replace one, or you might not have to replace any if they're not cleaned out. I always just think of an artery when I do that. So if you keep them clean, so yeah, you should be fine, but.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions on water expenditures?
Yeah. When I was on the council before, we used to run pigs through the pipes. Do we do that anymore?
Yeah, we pig the Ranny about every month, every other month.
Oh, we do?
Yeah, yep,
So, okay.
absolutely, yes.
Still coming out black?
But this is going from, so when you pig the Ranny, you're going from the Ranny well to the plant. We're talking about the laterals that are actually off the well underneath the
Right,
river.
yeah, I know.
Yeah, where they have to dive, yeah.
This is gonna sound really dumb, but explain pigs.
I just learned that term this year, too.
It's
You're
just,
not
think of
actually
it, think like a
line.
big foam, think of a big foam cork that you shoot from one end of the line down at the Ranny, and you shoot it all the way up to where the lagoons are, and you clean that line out. So just
Okay.
a big cork going through the line. And you gotta try to catch it when it comes out the other side, so.
They're special, they're trained.
All right.
I just keep picturing the Simpsons as spider pigs.
Yeah, they're spider pigs, like on The Simpsons.
Does whatever a spider pig does.
You get a chance to see it.
Okay, so moving on to sewer revenues. Fund 402. Again, you can see that it is driven by, we call it sewer sales, but basically that's a contribution of the ratepayers paying for the service. That's over at 9 o'clock. You can see the fund balance is more than half of the pie there at 3.4 million. Again, that's because we have large projects coming up and we're trying to save for that so we don't have to borrow as much when they happen. Again, the rate we're expecting for sewer is 2.67% increase. You can see the yellow mark in there. There's an item in there for, it says Waltz Meets Sewer Repair Capacity Improvement. That's one of the projects that we included in this budget, and I told you there were two. Waltz Meets is actually outside the city limits, but we provide sewer service to them, and they pay, 1.5% or 1.5 times the current rate for that service. They're wanting to expand. They're willing to pay. The project would cost about 1.5 million, and they're willing to put in 1.2 million over the course of 3 years. So that's, you see the 400,000 now. If City Council were to adopt that project, there'd be an agreement between the city and Waltz Meets to provide 400,000 a year for 3 years. But as you know, if you're doing a project that costs 1.5 million, we have to put that money up front, so that would affect the fund balance. So we're weighing between that project and the biosolid tank, which is a more costly project. We definitely can't do them both at the same time. So we'll be talking about that. So if we choose to go with the other project, that revenue source of 400,000 would go away until we enter into an agreement down the line with Waltz Meets to make that happen.
And again, I just raised the question of the timing. If we don't do that project, are they gonna move out, or?
The biosolids tank or the
No,
Waltz Meet increase?
Waltz Meet.
So I don't know, I haven't asked them that question, what's gonna happen if we can't increase your capacity? I will tell you right now that we have a failed sewer line that's, that serves Waltz Meets, that their flow goes through. And we were gonna replace the belly of that line that failed, and that was a $250,000 bid that came in for us. What we decided is when they said, well, wait a minute, instead of just placing that small belly, we need additional capacity. Would you guys consider replacing the whole line from Waltz Meets through down South Pekin Road to, I think, Lift Station 9 and 2, if I remember the numbers right? And we said, absolutely, but you'd have to pay for that cost, and we'll just put $250,000 in the pot because we would have had to replace the belly in the line. And so they came back and said, well, let us take that to our directors or our board or whatever. They did, and they said, we'd be willing to do it, but we can't do it all in one fell lump sum. So we're working with them right now on that. There isn't anything set in stone. We have our engineering side's working on it as far as the cost goes. We'll have to work with our attorney and their attorney to make sure the contract's right, but there isn't a definite yet. We also have to make sure that the additional flow capacity, that we can treat it at our sewer plant. So it's kind of sitting off there on the wayside, but the biosolids tank is something that is mandated that we're going to have to do. But I think that we working with Derek, as Mayor Finn was stating earlier, and I was just sharing with Pete today that he was unaware of, I think we can come up with a different game plan to reduce the cost of that biosolids tank with our engineering firm, do some value engineering and bring that cost down, that we might be able to do both of these projects. Not 100% sure yet, but that's what we're working on. That's the goal.
Yeah, I think my big concern would be just how viable is that company? How profitable are they able to, I mean, because we'd be really counting on them to.
100%. Yeah. And Waltz Meats has proven to us at the city from our past experience working with them that they would be able to make that payment. But it is a risk that you take, right? Because if somebody says they're going to give you $400,000 a year, and you do that project, you need to guarantee that you're going to get the $400,000 a year. That's correct. Because it's the ratepayers' dollars.
Yeah, and you'd almost have to look at it like a loan, and you'd have to have whatever assurances worked into that agreement to make sure it does get paid. Because the last thing we'd want is for the taxpayers to pay, or the ratepayers to pay to service something outside the city limits. So, yeah,
And we could ask.
You're absolutely right. So when it comes to city council, we're going to have to make sure all eyes are on it.
And we could bond it. We could bond it like we
Right.
do a project.
Pete,
Yes.
question for Ms. Coleman. Being they're out of city limits, what's the city, do we gain anything from them, say, giving them service, sewer service, besides them paying a little bit extra? Are we gaining anything from them?
The city as a whole has gained from them. They've gained employment. They contribute to our fire department. So yes, as a whole, the city has
And they're
gained from them.
Still working with Woodland Action as well. I know they did in the past.
They do. They donate like pallets of meat
Okay.
often and regularly.
They're a really good community member. They give back quite a bit. They give to Rotary at Christmas time. They give to the police department at Christmas time.
They used to give to Planners Day too.
Yeah.
They're a
They
big
do,
one.
they
As
do,
a
they do.
whole.
Yeah,
They're a great contributor to the community.
yeah.
And something I don't know if, but like when the freezers went out at the food bank, they just sent their staff members over to deal with it, which we didn't have to pay for it.
Oh, cool.
They paid them.
I'm just thinking,
Yeah.
I'm just kind of weighing, if we're gonna put this kind of money into a company that's out of city limits, and we need a project done
Right.
within our
Well,
own
it's a great question.
infrastructure.
Yeah. And,
Well,
and
and
like
they-
we,
But weren't they so when we had that conversation, or when the city had the conversation several years ago about annexation, Waltz Meats, the Ferguson Farm, there was a lot of people, they were very active in that conversation because they're looking to grow, and they've always been really big community partners, and they were looking to grow, but if I remember correctly, when that all kind of fell apart, it changed how their plans went when annexation became impossible. If I remember, isn't that kind of what happened?
yeah, I believe so.
Yeah.
Mr. Goddard, did they ever officially apply to come into the city during that time period?
They did initially apply to be included in the annexation, and then at the end of the process, they essentially said they withdrew, but I never received anything in writing from them.
When we cross that bridge, I think maybe trying to broach that with them again is annexing in as part of this deal, maybe? Is that
Well-
possible?
Our code specifically says that if you are receiving water and sewer service, In addition to the 150% of the rate, it comes with an agreement not to challenge annexation
Okay.
because it's a condition of the service.
But they're not receiving those services.
Correct.
They're only receiving sewer.
I think they both independently have that standard.
Oh, gotcha, okay. Ms. Franz?
So do we charge interest on that? If, say they give us 400,000 and they still owe us 1,600?
Well, and we
Or
haven't
800
developed
or
the agreement.
whatever.
The agreement hasn't been developed yet, but those are all things that we'd have to consider.
Yeah, okay.
Because, essentially, they're paying for
It's a loan, basically,
Right,
so.
Right. We're contributing the 250,000 that we were going to have to put into the line to fix, the belly where the line sagged, which has a benefit to the city, but they're paying for the benefit to Waltz Meats by
Right,
increasing the size of the line.
okay.
But yeah, those are all things we're gonna have to look at in the agreement. All right, okay, moving on to expenditures in the sewer fund. So you can see the big chunk here for 2024 is at 9 o'clock, repairs and maintenance, 2,169,000. Excuse me. The next biggest item is the ending fund balance at 1.689 million. And again, that's going towards future projects, saving for that. Salaries and benefits at 748,000, professional services at 685,000. So those are the main drivers of the sewer fund in expenditures this year. And again, if we shift projects, we may be coming to council with some amendments to that. Any questions right off?
Can I step right in it?
Please.
So, right, the green pie piece at the bottom,
Minol contract, yeah.
correct? So is this just the portion for the sewer, or is that is just them billing sewer, correct?
Excuse me. Correct.
The
I believe,
49K? So what's since the water one was kind of backwards, what is theirs? Did
yeah,
you
I
break
think
that
it's,
out? It's the
I
same.
believe it's the same amount, but when I grouped it together in the pie chart, I think, let me look at the spreadsheet here.
Is that under professional services?
I think I included it under professional services,
Underwater.
yeah. Let me get to the more detailed item.
So your water.
So the Minol contract in sewer is 49,588.
And then what is it for water?
The same amount.
So about 100K. That's the annual.
Cost for,
to use
There's
that.
also a small portion in, let's see, we also charge it to garbage.
Correct. Okay.
Let's see, the amount there is 1,320. And we also charge it to the stormwater fund. And that contribution is 1,320 also.
So just a hair over
$100,000.
$100,000.
Right.
Everybody write that down so when we get to payroll.
Oh, I was just gonna say, estimated 103
Yeah, so it's.
for that one position.
Okay.
I knew that question was coming.
Yeah, it was coming quick.
I was looking at it too.
All right, so
But
that
mind you,
is,
just real quick, let me
Sure.
just follow up on that. If it comes back in-house, you're gonna have to hire 2 people.
Correct.
Right.
So I just want,
That
So
was,
that's 200.
it's not a net neutral.
over.
That was the entire point, that nobody wants to go back
Right.
and watch like 10, 12 hours worth of budget or conversations about that, that was the whole point of sending it out. Because they needed additional staff members at 100,000 a year with benefits and
Right.
retirement and 103,000,
That 3 makes a difference.
yeah.
All right. So next, we're moving on to payroll.
Yay!
Let's see. Let me see if I've got a.
Let's do that back page.
I think it's just what you pulled out, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Hold it here. Oh. Oh.
Yeah. It was, well, I was thinking maybe I could have a better view there, but I'll just pull it up here. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's better on the website?
Yeah.
Where can I pick up
Which one you-
application?
Where's that, which one do you
Wait,
put it?
hold on a second. You have to remember, Mr. Alderman, go towards the middle of the page. That's the end, if you're just looking at the end. I saw what you were looking at. That includes everything. That's the city's
Right.
portion. That's everything, health insurance, all of that stuff.
Just health insurance is $20,000 a year on that.
All right, so I apologize
They
to
are
the
paying
public
for it,
here. This is going to be really hard to read, but it is on the website. and-
I know.
Yeah, so,
I do it every year. No, hold on. Reel it back.
And then
All right,
you look at
so-
compensation for your money and-
so you have in front of you the spreadsheet. It's also online that shows every position in the city categorized by department. So at the top, you see Public Works. You see the Clerk Treasurer's Office and Administration. You see Community Development and Police at the bottom. So I wanted to talk about police a little bit. As you know, we have the new labor agreement with them with that 8% increase the first year, which is pretty substantial. The reason behind that, again, was half of our department right now is in its probationary period because of the turnover we're having. So we're trying to combat that and get officers to stay. The problem is, I think if you pull up any city or county website right now, you'll see an advertisement for law enforcement personnel. There just aren't enough folks willing to take on that difficult profession. And, you know, honestly, it's getting pretty cutthroat between the jurisdictions also, poaching staff. So we're making a good faith attempt to adequately fund the positions and try to be competitive. It's difficult for a town of our size because we're losing we lost one to Vancouver PD, and there's no way we can compete with, you know, Vancouver's tax base and sales tax. But we're doing things within the department too, and the chief can tell you, trying to provide certain trainings. We rotate the detective position. We created the administrative sergeant position, trying to allow officers in the department to get different experiences and training that can help them in their professional life. In looking at this, you can see the bold figures in this column here, going up to the top. That is annual gross salary total. And to the left of that, you can see what goes into that. So the furthest left, you can see the hourly rate, the gross monthly rate, the number of months. If someone has a step increase, it may not be 12 months at one rate, maybe 3 months and then 9 months at another rate. You also see longevity pay. Some of the unions receive that. You also see certification pay. That's mostly public works, Teamsters, and police for certain training they have. Education pay. And the overtime column is estimated, it's based on actual overtime from the previous fiscal year. In the past, we were always going negative on our salaries and benefits, especially with the police department, and it was because we were totally under projecting overtime rates. So you can see focusing on police again, we're looking at salaries and wages at about $1.9 million, and that includes the overtime pay. And to the left of that bold column, you can see the overtime estimates. You can see one of the sergeants in that yellow pay, the second yellow stripe down in the police, earned $33,000 in 1 year just with overtime. Anytime you have a 24/7 operation like this, you're going to have overtime. When you're not fully staffed, that contributes to inflating the overtime, and it's a constant battle. So when we're able to be fully staffed, you'll see that overtime decrease a little bit, but it's a continual challenge. So you can see with that overtime, the top sergeant would potentially earn $153,000, almost $154,000 that year, which is a hefty sum. You'll see the officers' rates range from $90,000 with overtime for some of the less senior folks, up to that $153,000. You can see one of the discussions I had with the HR committee. So the HR committee looked at this and recommended that, the Teamster contracts were locked into at 3.25% COLAs, the police at 8%, and the exempt, where you have some discretion, we usually try to tie those to what the Teamsters get at 3.25%. One of the questions that came up during the HR committee meeting was, you have the police chief and the lieutenant who are supervising folks that just received an 8% increase. Do we want to do something different than the 3.25%? You can see some compaction between the rates over time if you don't keep up with, the folks you're supervising. With that said, you can see the top sergeant at $153,000, subtract the $33,000 out of that. Then you look at what the police chief is at, about $130,000. So it's compressing the, on the straight salary, the chief still is making more than the other folks in the department. Lieutenant, it might be a little different at $115,000. So it is getting close. In this budget, we included that $130,000 for the chief, included a 3.25% COLA. So that's what we have in the budget now, but I think it deserves a little bit of consideration by council if you want to differ from that or not. Moving to the right of that column, we'll show you the benefits. So we calculate all of the taxes and benefits that go with that. So, for instance, employee retirement, employment security, labor and industry has a charge, Social Security and Medicare tax. The big one is the health insurance. So we have a composite rate. It's actually been stable over the last few years. We didn't have a rate increase this year, for instance. But you know, a full 12 months of health insurance, the contribution for the employer is $20,820 for the city. We've been moving with the bargaining units to have them take a bigger share of the premium. For instance, the police, we were shooting for 90% of the city and 10% for the employee. And Mr. Mayor, correct me if I'm wrong, we got to 7.5% that the employee is taking on with the police department. And we're going to negotiate the Teamsters agreements next year, and we'll be shooting to increase that.
Teamsters are currently paying 5, so the police
You're
are
right.
paying 5, and so we're trying to.
Yeah, so that's a long-term goal we're trying to get to, but yeah. So anyway, you can see the second column to the end on the right, that's a total of what the benefits cost. And to the right of that, you have the benefits plus what you saw, the annual gross salary total. For instance, that first person salary with overtime in Public Works is $117. I believe that's one of our superintendents. And the benefits totaled just short of $45,000 for a total of $162,000 for an employee. Yeah, so you can, I just want to make sure you know how to read this and interpret the data. And we're locked in with the union contracts. You know, you were talking about utility billing, for instance. That's a clerk 4 position in the bargaining unit. So if you look at, I guess, the payroll, or there are a couple clerk positions in the police department, that gives you a sense of, let's see, so it would be $66,000 for salary and benefits, or salary, gross wage. And let's see, make sure I'm tracking across here. Benefits would be about $35,000 for a total of $102,298. So when we're billing bi-monthly, we had one utility billing person, and but going forward with monthly billing, you know, we're looking at something greater than one FTE, maybe up to 2 full-time equivalent employees. We definitely have to look at cross-training and seeing, you know, if we can limit that to a certain extent. But yeah, it would be more than what the contract is now with Vinyl.
Mrs. Rhodes.
I just have a comment, going back to the police. I'm glad that we raised our increases, because we send these young officers for training. It costs a lot of money for us to train all these officers, and then the other areas take them once they're trained, or, you know. So it's good to kind of get our rates up a little bit so that we can hope that we can maintain some of these officers, rather than being a stepping point for us training them and then them going someplace else.
Right, and also, you know, that 8% is higher than any contract I've ever, you know, been a part of. But 2%, you know, other jurisdictions that we compare ourselves to had given 2% for wearing body cameras. So, you know, it's pretty high the first year, but, you know, if we don't stay competitive, you know, the law enforcement is a little different than negotiating with the Teamsters, in that there's what's called binding arbitration. And that's in place because law enforcement legally can't strike, where Teamsters could. So Basically, what an arbiter will do, if it got that far, they'd look at the proposals of the police union, they'd look at the proposals of the city, they'd look at comparables to see what other entities are getting, and they'd just come down and say, okay, this is what it's going to be. And it's binding, and it's very expensive to go through. It's almost, you have to have, the labor attorney represent you. It's almost like paying for a trial. So it's very costly. Luckily, this year we weren't in that predicament, but, we've come close in the past, but been able to work out a contract everyone's happy with. So, yeah, so it's, salaries and benefits are a big part of the budget, across the board. You saw it in Public Works, you see it in the police and the general fund. Yeah, it takes people to provide the services.
This question is for Chief Kelly. My understanding, we lost an officer. I know we have a agreement when we put them through the academy. If they're not here for a certain amount of time, they have to reimburse for the training.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do we have an officer in that predicament right now, or are we gonna be able to get that money back from him?
We will have an officer in that predicament on November 20th. So, you're talking about the officer that just left?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not gonna get that back. He left early, and it's difficult to retrieve that funding.
Is there any steps we can take to, I know, cause I had the same kind of arrangement when I was with the fire department. That was kind of my duty, the training and recruitment stuff, and I had that in place, and I was told, yeah, good luck it looks good on paper, but good luck ever trying to get it.
Well, it's like signing a waiver at, an amusement park or something like that for your child. It looks good. The honest people will abide by it, but, if push came to
So when
shove,
comes down to
it doesn't
brass
really,
tacks,
yeah.
It's not worth the paper it's on.
Right. And like I said, it's very competitive right now. I mean,
Yeah,
some
so
entities
we
are
gotta
offering
figure out some ways,
$30,000 signing
'cause
bonuses.
looking at this, 2 of the 3 top wage earners in the whole city are sergeants, and it comes from overtime. We need to figure out some way to keep our officers, so they're not making so much overtime.
Well, and, I know overtime's kind of a double-edged sword too, because, it's nice to have a bigger paycheck, but at the same time, you're away from your family and friends and on the job all the time, and you don't want an officer getting burned out. I agree with you. We need to do what we can to limit overtime, as much as possible, both for the health and safety of the
Don't
officers,
get me
but
wrong,
also
I
for the
support
city's bottom line.
PD
Oh, yeah,
1,000%.
absolutely.
To me, that's the most important thing we have in the city. But holy cats, that's a lot of money.
It is.
I like water too, though. I think there's a lot of important things in the city.
Okay, so a couple questions, and this also goes back to the police department. Sergeant Keller left, so one of these 3 sergeant positions have not been filled at this time, correct?
Correct.
So will the new sergeant be at the same rate as, because they're all the exact same as far as that, so is all sergeants paid the same?
So they're sergeants in the union contract. They're part of the association. Have a 3-step grid, so you can hire at step 1, 2, and after 3 years, you're topped out at step 3.
Okay.
So it would depend on the experience level and who's going in. So if you have someone who hadn't been a sergeant before, most likely they'd be at step 1.
So if we hired an officer within that has not been a sergeant, they would actually make less, and we could actually
most
cut
likely,
some
yeah.
of that potentially from that
Or-
section.
Or
Right.
promote within, it'll be a step 1.
Right.
That's the plan, yes, sir.
And then,
I wouldn't recommend, however, reducing the appropriation, because when an officer leaves, we have to pay out their accrued time and leave. So if they had a certain number of vacation hours, We pay sick time hours up to a certain block. So we need a little bit of flexibility in the budget to cover that.
Okay. Next question. Did we just approve to add another officer?
Chief? Jump in there.
We haven't approved it, or council hasn't approved it. We're asking for another officer.
Right.
We put it in the budget.
Okay,
For an
so
additional
on
position.
here, there is another officer in this
There's
budget.
there's another FTE
Yes.
in this
Okay,
budget, yes.
because I know we had just talked about it, I just wasn't sure where
It
we were on
is
that.
in the
Okay,
budget
it is in the budget already,
Yep.
okay. All right, just wanted to ask those two questions, thank you.
Right, you bet. And
I'll say that
again,
we're the first administration in 20 years to actually add a position that was not voted on by property tax. So we've done a good job saving money and taking care of the strategic plan and pushing law enforcement services. So just put that out there.
I just had a thought. So, when folks apply to be an officer and we send them off to the academy and they come back, could some of the motivation for them to move to another area, not here, like to leave us, is it because where would they live? Like inside city limits? Like, do you guys still have that requirement where they're mandated to live within so many minutes of this building? And because where would they live? Where could they possibly afford to live in this town?
According to the contract that they have, their collective bargaining agreement, it's 20 miles.
Okay,
So we're able to draw from outside of the city limits and outside of the general area to get, because we have a few people that live in Clark County and the rest live in Cowlitz.
because it just seems like it would be prohibitive. I'm still shocked that 50-year-old houses are selling for $750,000, and I'm thinking, who could possibly afford that? Even on this, to me, this is y'all make way more than I do. But I'm like, dang, if that could be the motivating, if that is one of the reasons that maybe people even don't apply here, I don't know.
Well, I think one of the biggest benefits that council has approved years ago, before my time, was allowing take-home cars for these officers. That's huge. We're one of the few municipalities that does that. County and state are the only other agencies that do that on a regular basis. But we're one of the few municipalities that allow take-home cars as long as they're living within a certain amount of time, certain distance, excuse me. And our officers are not allowed to take their cars home until they pass their field training program. And we're pretty strict with that. There are officers that we do deviate from our 14-week field training that have lateral experience. They may have experience inside the county, which is big because they're using the same software and databases that we're using on a regular basis. So they're familiar with that, and a lot of times that's a challenge for a newer officer.
Gotcha, thank
Well,
you.
with the cost of gasoline, that is a big thing right now,
Yes, ma'am.
big thing.
Yeah.
Being able to take the car home.
I have another question for Chief. This is just an opinion question for you. Is it better to hire a complete green officer, run through the academy, and bring them up? Because we all know different departments do things different ways. Or is it more beneficial to get a lateral
Well,
hire?
on paper, it's more beneficial to get a lateral because the time to have an impact on the team is reduced. When you're looking at a brand new hire, it's every bit of about a year before that officer's out on at his or her own. So it is beneficial to have a lateral entry because then it's only required a maximum of 12 to 14 weeks for the field training program. And then that officer is out on its own, on his or her own.
I think you touched on some good things there, Chief, too. What are some of the other incentives that we've put out there to help retain and recruit? We've got a take-home car policy.
Well, and some of the new programs that we've had, that we've implemented, obviously it's the body cam thing. That's gonna protect officers in the long run, even though they may not feel that way. That's also gonna protect our citizens and lend us to the open and transparent things that we do in the organization. The other thing is we've established a phlebotomy program. We've never had one of those before, which gives officers a little bit of an opportunity to do a little bit more than just patrol. We have the drone program, also gives us a little bit more than just patrol. But with the establishment of the administrative sergeant, we're able to potentially re-examine that position and maybe reclassify that, as well as, adding another investigator to our investigative division, because right now we only have one. So some of those things in the what we affectionately call extracurricular activity will keep these officers engaged and some ownership. I'm also in the process, two officers, one sergeant, one officer, will be beginning background investigator program tomorrow, because we just lost Sergeant Keller, who was one of our background investigators, and Detective Casey is our other background investigator. We'll have two more who are capable of doing that. But that also lends all the programs that we've implemented have we've done that knowing that all of these officers that are part of these programs will become better officers in the long run, more well-rounded officers. We just sent an officer to rifle school so he can instruct us. We have an officer who needs to, or a sergeant that needs to complete his defensive tactics training to become a master, because the ultimate goal is to hear, it looks like on the piece of paper in my head, is to be a self-contained agency where we don't have to count on other agencies to help us out with certain things. We've got less lethal program in place now, which gives us other options. Council has authorized a plethora of new equipment, technology for these officers to do their job, and we're thankful for that. Council has done an outstanding job in supporting our department, and we've taken those opportunities to open up some of these new programs that we've implemented just in the last year and a half, 2 years. So we're on our way.
You mentioned the phlebotomy program with a guy, a couple of them. The officer I rode with the other night said he had the opportunity to help out the state here not too long ago. Do we charge them for that service?
No.
Other agencies?
No.
We don't, okay.
No, because we wind up kind of helping each other out.
Okay.
Our allied agencies, we might lean on them for something, and so it all kind of evens out in the end. Yeah.
I was just wondering.
Yes, ma'am.
So I know that we had this discussion prior to suggesting that we add another officer to the books, and if council does decide to make that an official thing, I liked the idea of even looking at, I say newbies rather than necessarily our laterals, to give a wider selection of diversity to our pool. And sitting in some of our interviews that we have sat in, I know you and I have had that conversation.
Yes.
That some of the newer candidates that don't have the lateral bringing more diversity to our police department. That if we could have added a position that was specifically for, hey, get this because it does take a year. Now knowing that we're able to fund that, I would like to see maybe looking at having one that does give an opportunity for some of those that are looking to get into our police force.
Absolutely. No.
And just a suggestion, because I think, sometimes getting into the laterals and all of that, you do have more experience, and they might be more apt to leave too and not stick around as much as maybe somebody who, if we could bring them up and they like what they see. I don't know. You and I have had a conversation, so you know where I'm going with that, but.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean that just because I put council
Absolute-
decides to put somebody through the academy, they're gonna stick around. Because the last
Absolutely.
two that we lost, we put through the academy and they left.
Okay,
So it's, you know, I think that we gamble, whether it's a lateral entry officer or an entry-level officer, we gamble when we
Okay.
hire somebody, because you never know what the future might bring.
Okay.
And we're trying to increase opportunities for officers with new programs, new ideas, and so far, so good. I mean, we've got some new programs, but we have such a young department where we really have to examine probationary officers assuming some of these specialty spots or extracurricular spots that we're talking about, where that may not be beneficial, because we want those officers to focus on their day job and be successful as probationary officers before we move them to other specialty jobs.
absolutely.
And maybe keep some of our senior officers in positions longer to allow other officers, and we're doing that right now with the potential promotional process. We're delaying the promotional process so that 2 of our officers are eligible to be promoted.
Okay.
Doesn't make everybody happy, but that's what we're doing.
Awesome. All right, thank you.
Mr. Smith?
I appreciate all of the police talk, but we also have other departments that, as far as recruitment and retention goes, that we need to look at as well. So I don't want to forget about those other departments in this long conversation. I think, what did we have? 3.25% is on there, and our cost of living was 7% and 8% the last 2 years. So I think with this conversation, we need to look at possibly increasing those across the board for everybody. That's just my opinion. I think retention is a big one on that.
Can I, what is that 1% tax for property?
Prop one.
The number that would bring in, 18,000-ish
Yeah.
annual?
I believe it's a little more than that, but we haven't received, we got a projection from Clark County, but we haven't received the numbers from Cowlitz County yet. So until I get those, I won't be able to really answer that question.
What's the ballpark on that, though? Is it right in?
I want to say it was between 30 and 40,000.
Oh, it's over than that. Oh, I thought it was maybe I'm thinking the half year collection.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Think about, we need to pay what we want.
And like I was saying before, I think I rambled a little bit and got off topic, but we're becoming more reliant on sales taxes as we move forward, because we did drop our property tax so low. So as long as the economy's cooking, that's all right, but we need to look at fund balances for a rainy day also.
Right.
Every year we don't do that 1% is a year we can't make up, because by law we can only do 1%. So eventually we have a cost of living of 8% for the city, and we don't even take the 1% to try to offset that. The next year we have another 7%, and we don't take that 1%, we're down 14% at that point. So I appreciate wanting to try to cut some costs, but that might be an option. So just something to consider.
And just so council's aware, at the next meeting, we're gonna have the departments give their presentations. This is just to give you an overall idea of where the budgets are, and make sure new council members can ask questions, and, get everyone on the same page as we're moving, so.
I think by bringing that up, at least we know what we're losing.
Yeah, they're all legitimate topics of discussion, and that's why you're all elected, to make this policy decision as a whole.
I'm just just wanna butt in and say something that, I know, I'm sorry, but I'm like, I was getting all teary-eyed because like when I first started coming to meetings just to watch and learn was like 8-9 years ago. It was before you were elected. And the police department was so underfunded, right? And it was unsafe for them. And it's been a long time, and I'm not on the public safety committee, but it just warms my heart to think that finally, like the things that I heard people, they were like pleading for help for that department. And it makes me feel good that it's finally there, like you're finally getting there. And I appreciate all of that. But yeah, so I started getting all the feels over here, like it's finally happened, and it's been a long time, and we had a couple chiefs, and this one didn't run away screaming, so thanks for staying.
Well,
So, but yeah, I feel like anybody who maybe remembered all of that it sounds like, wow, cool. I think that's really cool, and that you're gonna add, that you found the money to add somebody else, and it sounds like everybody's happy in your department. Like, I don't know, I would think they would be appreciative of the fact that folks in this community supported Prop 1 and have been very vocal about where they want their tax dollars spent, and that council was receptive in that, so.
I believe when I was in council, we were paying $1.2 million to run the police.
Well, and to be honest with you, our budget is, I hate to say, it's still very low for the police department. You look at other cities across Washington, and well, pretty, almost across the nation, it's probably 50% or greater is their general fund budget towards law enforcement. And we're at 35%.
yeah,
So I mean,
34.
we still have some ways to go, but I think we're moving in the right direction for sure for our community. Yeah.
Give them 34.5% this year. Don't spend it all in one place.
All right, so that's a good overview on salaries. You know, it should be noted too, we're still recruiting for a water treatment plant operator. That's another area where there's a huge shortage of qualified staff, certified staff out there. We're doing our best. We have our water superintendent who's fully certified operating the plant. Our superintendent at the wastewater treatment plant, Mr. Derek Ambergy, he's also certified in water, so he's helping out. And we have an individual training. We moved from the road department up there, and Tracy Coleman has been able to find, she always finds money. She found a $15,000 grant to help with the apprenticeship program. So, you know, we really are working at training folks in-house and giving them the tools they need to progress. But yeah, it's crazy. We've sent out emails to every water operator in the state trying to recruit these folks, and it's, you know, it's a tough go, and every jurisdiction is having issues. So if you have a young person in your life, maybe steer them towards water and wastewater. It's
That's
could
with
be a
all the
good career.
trades, really.
Yeah.
All the trades struggle.
Well, and there's a program that I asked the mayor about through Cascadia Tech over, it's like, they used to call it Skill Center.
Yeah.
And so they have a lot of different things like, diesel mechanics and auto mechanics and like office stuff and.
Law enforcement program as well.
Yes,
Yeah.
they have those kind of opportunities, and I know if you reach out, then it's kind of neat to have a kid. I took one at work. I think I had her, for about 6 weeks, and you get like 20 hours a week. But it's kind of neat to offer up some like real world experience of kind of what that industry looks like, so that as they're planning their future, maybe that is the thing they want to get into, or it's an easy way to find out that maybe what they wanted to go to college for maybe isn't it. And I think you were gonna look at, contacting somebody, well, yeah, you're busy, I know, but it just seemed like a really good opportunity, and then to get some kids in young.
Well, and they followed through with shutting down the Larch Mountain facility, so.
Oh, they did.
Yeah. So you get qualified people out of there to run these plants as well, for rehabilitation and things. So that's just one less resource that we have as a state, not just as a city, but as a state as well. So it's unfortunate.
Right. Okay, the last item on the agenda I had was property and sales tax. I didn't have time to put together a slide, but we've been talking about it throughout the evening. So the recommendation is to not increase the property tax by 1%. And sales tax has been, we're projecting 2.7 million next year in sales tax. Previous year, we were thinking we were going to be around 2.1 million. Year 2022, we actually brought in 2.7 million, but I'm one of those who likes to underestimate the revenues. But I'm seeing sufficient data to feel comfortable with that 2.7 million next year. Knock on wood.
So I think our finance committee, it's the last couple of years we've been, the trajectory is up.
It is.
It is unusually so.
Right.
Which
Right. Yeah.
I'm thankful for it, but it just seems like even during COVID, we were trending upwards when a lot of people weren't.
Well, yeah, a lot of cities cut back, including our own during COVID. All the indicators where everything was going to collapse. And so we were able to add to our fund balance a little bit during that time period, although it was really rough on everyone. But yeah, so far sales tax has been stable the last few years, but we have to know it's not a guarantee.
Right.
And while there's a million great things we need to do in the budget, we do need to build fund balance for that rainy day also.
Because that is a requirement that council put in place many years ago.
Yeah, council set goals and financial I'll get you all a copy of the financial policy too, especially for you folks who haven't been on council before.
That
It'd be good
was
for you
the
to review that.
previous administration. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I
So,
think Mr. Fredericks helped with that one.
Yes.
I think that he was the big push on that.
so that's all I have for this evening. Like I said, at the next go-around, we'll start department presentations. So you'll hear from the Chief Community Development Director and Public Works Director and myself, and we'll so be thinking about questions. We might have some new pie charts for you or other charts, maybe even line charts. But yeah, in the interim, if someone has a question, please contact me. And if you have questions about how the overall financial system works for the city, about how we have to use certain funds only for certain purposes. So while you see that $33 million overall expenditures, really the revenue that you have some authority over really doesn't come to that much. I mean, you're really looking at a small percentage of that overall 33 million that you have any sway over. Yeah, so anyway, I look forward to any questions, and we'll get together and do this again.
I want to say thank you for the pie charts.
Oh.
They are good.
I
They
heard
really
from
do
you
help.
and Mr. Alderman and a
No,
couple
they-
others.
They
So
really do help. They help
They
people
do,
understand.
because you can visualize.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a good job on it. I think.
It's not just
Nice
a bunch of data
presentation.
on some sheets.
Right.
It's
Yeah,
just- there go,
you
yeah.
can easily, because like
Identify.
like I said
Maybe so
before, we
Walter
learned those
can
in like
understand
first,
what you're saying.
kindergarten,
No,
first
that's
grade.
well,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Are we not meeting next Monday?
Regular meeting next Monday.
That's a regular meeting.
Regular
Right,
council
so I
meeting.
didn't include all of the regular meetings on that budget calendar, but we're still meeting, the first and third Mondays. If we have room on those agendas, we'll do a budget workshop. If it seems too tight, we'll defer to the next Monday, the off Monday. So,
All right. We have come to the end of our meeting.
Make a motion to end the meeting.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Brown, second by Councilmember Dowdy. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The
no, you
ayes
can
have
keep
it.
those, yeah.
It is
And
nine
all
nineteen.
that stuff's on the website too, if you're interested in.
I can find it here.
Yeah. I'm gonna, oh, go ahead.
Converting.